I think quite a lot of brushing up. Actually, it's more in terms of how you deliver and present. Of course, when we met, it was not meant to be a pitching session, but I would love for you guys to be a bit more familiar with your products, your company, your vision behind it, and also especially when you're pitching in English, right? When sometimes a second or a third language is not easy to pitch in. And I remember some of you guys are a bit more familiar with Mandarin, even as compared to English. So it's really easier to then practice, focus a bit more on that. So what I'll do today is that I have a deck on some of the best practices, which is technically meant to be a bit more for self-consumption and self-reference. So I'll not go through every single one of them, but I'll just touch on the high-level topics and overall flow so that hopefully it gives you a bit better understanding and a better idea in terms of what investors look at when you are pitching to them. What are some of the things to be aware of, and how do you actually improve, in certain ways. There can always be improvement in terms of how you present your slides, you can present your delivery and things like that, right? So I think let's make sure that you have all these notes on hand so that you can always continue to improve and hopefully then convert some of these meetings that you have into successful engagements. So, if you have any time, or sorry, if you have any questions during this hour that I have with you, please feel free to ask on chat itself. I will try to leave some time at the end for you guys to ask questions if you don't want to interrupt. But again, I'll have my chat open, so feel free to kind of share this, ask these questions on chat, and I'll try to address it if I can. Okay. All right, so let me just jump straight into the some of the best practices that I have, and this is kind of collated over the years in terms of number of pitches that we've seen through the multiple events that we've done, and also myself personally. And again, for those of you who don't know, I lead a plug and play team in Singapore and also drive investments for Southeast Asia. I've been with Plug and Play for about 14, coming to 15 years now. So I've seen my fair share of startup pitches. One good example and one good tip is that if you are interested in trying to improve your pitches, it'd be good to go to YouTube, find some of the good examples of startup pitches, and then just refer to them, watch more of them, and see how this is being delivered so that you can understand there are actually many different ways of presenting and also telling the story. So in general, what we try to kind of cover is in a good pitch, there's four basic elements. One essentially is what's the story flow? Is there a story behind it? Or are you trying to functionally just present what your company is and hopefully it gets across as basic as possible? But versus, how do you want to create a storyline behind it? It's like, all these K-drama that you guys watch, right? Some of you guys like certain storylines, some of you guys respond less to others. So it's the same as the audience responding to a story behind what your company is about. Right. So because of that, you should try to kind of put a spin around an identifiable as well as a relatable story, so that it sticks with the audience, right? Sometimes it's your product that is, exceptional enough to get a lot of attention. But a lot of times, a lot of the products that you're developing and you're building or you're selling, it's, I would say, at least 70-80% similar to many other startups out there, either from within Korea itself or from outside of Korea. So because of that, if you imagine, let's say, an investor like myself, when I meet startups, I look at least 20 to 30 startups per week. How can you stand out? How can you be remembered? Or how would you like to be remembered? right? So I think these are some of the key things that goes into firstly the story flow. What is the content that is being built into the presentation itself? Sometimes really less is more. The design of the slides. So as I mentioned, I've seen some of your slides. The design generally is good, but again, a less is more, right? So I was a bit worried when I went to Seoul this time because I've seen, especially a lot of the deep tech startups, putting a lot of data, a lot of information on the slides, which is very typical of big traditional tech companies, right? So I don't see a lot this time, which is great. But if you can take out as much as possible, leave the most important stuff, that will be good enough, right? Finally, it's the delivery. Right? How would you like to pitch? How do you like to deliver the words? How do you like to also again say more with less words, right? Bearing in mind there are different time periods and durations to certain pitches, to certain meetings. You should always be prepared to, for example, when you step in an elevator, how can you pitch, do an elevator pitch in 30 seconds or less? Or let's say if you are, meeting an investor at a networking lunch, right? How do you immediately attract attention so that you can unlock the next door? Okay, so these are the key elements that I do want to really kind of have you guys really focus on, and I'll touch upon a few points for each of these elements. Similar to how I ran my last workshop, if you guys can remember, I always like to ask questions. Unfortunately, we're doing it virtual, so I don't have any prizes to share. But does anyone know who this person is? Anyone? Raise your hands. Put it on the chat if you can share if your answers. I should be expecting one or two people to know who this is because I remember a couple of you guys are targeting the media and gaming sector. Right? No one? Okay. So if you don't, maybe you can brush up and study up on that. Okay. So this guy, his name is Justin Khan. You might have heard his name before. So Justin Khan is, if you look on the left, the founder of Justin TV, and he's also the co-founder of Twitch. Right? Basically, very successful startup. If you're into gaming, you know Twitch is a live streaming platform, and a lot of influencers are using it not just to stream games nowadays, but to just do live streaming chats and so on. Okay, so he's a serial entrepreneur. Amazon bought over Twitch, I think, for almost $1 billion. And then now he's actually actively investing back in startups, right? So I was trying to be, fun to kind of share some of the notes that Justin has kind of shared on Twitter, on X. So you can see some of his tweets on the right, and also across the entire presentation today, I will share a lot more of his other tweets that are very informative, very insightful, but very straight to the point in terms of addressing some of the key issues that we see in pitching, right? So if you can see from the right is that a deck is great, a pitch is great, but it doesn't immediately make people invest in you, right? So it's basically trying to be standing out, you're trying to communicate things very easily and sharing the most important and key information in your deck itself. Okay, so I'll share a bit more about that, but we jump straight into story flow. Okay, the key thing what I would like to share here is like similar to a job interview, right? I'm sure some of you guys have run and held job interviews or went through it yourself, right? The whole idea within a job interview is that within the first, let's say, 5 minutes, and usually the hiring manager or whoever is running the interview would have a good idea already of who that person is, who the interviewee is, and whether they would want to continue to interview them properly or give up on this candidate and not pay attention to this interview session anymore or that's It's good enough time to make a key impression, whether it's a go or no or a no go, right? So it's similar to the general audience logic if you want to kind of get to the next door. And again, a pitch or a meeting is not the end goal. It's like a game. It's essentially to unlock the next level, right? So you have an elevator pitch that unlocks a door into a proper sit-down meeting. And then a proper sit-down meeting is a gate to unlock multiple other deep dives. And then you unlock finally a discussion or a negotiation in terms of commercial or investment terms. And then after that, you just go unlock more sessions, right? Each of these meetings usually is considered as a gate or a level, right? In gaming terms. So the question is how can you unlock this door and whether you capture or you have the right enough information in each of this meeting. So usually very first meeting or very first pitch session or very first elevator session, it's this very simple logic, right? Within the first 5 minutes, and this happens very quickly, they look at you. What does this company do? Is this something I'm interested in? Let's say if it's an investor, if it's is this something that I invest in? If it's something that I am relevant to, or I know the space a lot. If it's not an interest area, I immediately should switch off. Okay, that's very fast. Okay, I'll rather spend time looking at my phone, doing other things, or trying to cut short the meeting if am sitting down with you, right? I'll try to cut short the meeting, and then after that, we just say bye bye. If it's something that I'm interested in, I go to the next phase, right? Is it an impressive team I'm looking at? Is this a clear problem? And then the final thing is, will it become big, right? So these are some of the examples of the things that run through the mind of specifically of an investor. There could be other areas where, let's say, if it's a commercial that you're engaging, right? Commercial, corporate, or if a client, potential client that you're engaging, right? So there could be slightly different thought processes, right? Is this, are you a product that I'm interested in doing, right? Or relevant to my company? Firstly, relevant to my company. Secondly, is it relevant to my role, right? If it's a potential client. Thirdly, is the product relevant to any of the problems that I have, right? And then fourth, I'll go into technical requirements. Does it fulfill my needs? And is it cheap enough? What is the pricing, right? So these are some of the gates that you need to essentially unlock in that person's mind. But generally, I'm generalizing here. Basically, the for an investor, they usually look at the structure of the team, the background of the team. Is this a really clear problem that needs to be solved? Is this my problem? And then will it become big or will it make money for me? Right. So these are the key things. So the purpose of then your presentation is to make sure that you keep going down and ticking the check boxes, right? Even though if you don't tick for whatever reason, it doesn't matter from a business standpoint. But if your presentation and your pitch is at fault, right, then the key problem is that your communication is letting down your product or your team, right? So I think that's something that you have to be very clear and very careful about. And who is the people that you're speaking to? So you really need to understand your audience, right? How are they looking at you? How are they listening to you? All right. What is there any background noise, right? So for example, if you're presenting and you're pitching to someone online, one key thing that I've noticed over the last, not last, but over the last year or so is that if you're using Apple AirPods, the noise canceling is not great, right? It also cancels your voice, right? Because of that, then the person who's listening on the other side is going to have a bad experience listening to you, right? So these are things that, how are they listening to you? Trying to be in their shoes, right? So, for example, I see some of you guys, different colleagues here, practice your pitch in front of each other and then role play. Imagine that you're an investor. Imagine that you are a business lead or client that you're pitching to. do do different cases of role plays and see how to learn from the experience. Okay. And why this is also important is because um, understanding your audience, if you understand their backgrounds, right? You can, before the meeting, look at LinkedIn, figure out who you're pitching to. If they're a software person, then uh, you can maybe lead the conversation and your content a bit more software directional. If it's a hardware guy, then yes, then you should kind of excite them using more hardware types of content. If it's a finance guy, for example, then you should focus on some of the commercial terms, finance, savings, earnings, and so on, right? So these are some of the things that a preparatory work before the presentation is important to understand who that is. And then your story flow and your content would have to stick to that audience, right? And in general, basically for story flow, you can use different types of stories, right? Some can be an adaptation of something real. Some can be even fake, right? Or you can actually create something that is out of thin air, but you something that you know that can excite the people that you talk to, right? But at the end of the day, kind of balance that between pure functional, this is what we do, this is what we sell, this is how much we charge, versus at the other extreme, having too much of a story, right? So find a balance in the middle. Firstly, what you think the audience would react to, and secondly, how you think you can get the point across. I think that's the main thing. Okay, so if you're a founder, of course, you can use your own personal story. If you're even an employee that early employee of the team, that you have very much faith, a lot of faith in the company. Maybe you can even tell your story of how you actually joined the company, right? Because you're very interested in this space, and when these guys come up with this new product, you really want to join them. And this is where you are at this point. So personal stories are better because it's easier for you to uh, articulate it, to communicate that because you're telling your own story. But you can also have a balance of everything else, right? How your team is thinking right now, how your team has come together to come create something, or how can you actually create a new vision, right? So these are the things that you can actually build a story around that. Um, I mean, if you guys watch a lot of these kind of K-dramas, you can, even kind of copy some of the elements. Not too crazy about it, but you can copy some of these elements into your pitch itself. But don't exaggerate. Okay, don't go over the top on that. Okay. Moving on to content. The overall and overarching content is that you need to have a basic structure of what's there. Okay. Sometimes, again, you might want to take one or two things out, but don't cram everything in, right? And the second point is that if you look at the second column, is that you need to have different pitches for different occasions. I have seen some of you guys, when you start presenting, you are going through a few different presentations, which is great, but make sure that you can find them easily and you're organized enough to pull them up as and when you need to present, right? So you might have a folder that's specifically for Korean presentations. You might have one folder specifically for English presentations. And then within the English presentations folder, for example, let's say when you come to Singapore or you go to Australia or you go to Indonesia, you then pull out one that is maybe 3 minutes, one that is 6 minutes, one that is 30 minutes, right? So you can actually have the right set of content and you can immediately just put it in the title, right? It could also have a slightly different version where one is meant for an investor pitch, one is meant for a client, and even for client, you can even break it down into, hey, this is for finance industry that I'm targeting, this is for gaming industry, this is for education institutes. It's a lot of work, yes, but if you're a salesperson or if you're a founder that's pitching your vision, it's better to be prepared. Okay, you can have at the end of the day one key master deck, right? To keep everything in order. But if you have one presentation set that is tailored to the particular meeting, for example, if it's a meeting, the people that you meet with I think they can appreciate and be grateful that you've prepared for the meeting and you're running through most of the slides in a particular order that you think they want to, and you keep it short and sweet. Okay. It's very tough for them to really see it on the presentation screen, especially in the same room, that you are jumping across different slides. Okay. It means it can show that you're prepared, you have all the information available, but you have not, I would say, prepared well for that particular meeting. Okay, so if you basically kind of do it bit by bit, have different sessions, different practices, including demos, right? So that will be impressive on its own. Okay, sometimes the content might not even be that good, but your presentation skills, your time management, and then your call to action at the end of the day is key. It can also leave an impression. Okay, so be prepared, and maybe I can get Taryn and Inhi to uh, run some sort of homework. So if you guys can share eventually a screenshot of your folder, number of presentations that you guys have prepared before you fly into the market, who you intend to meet, and what sort of presentations you've created for that. I think we should kind of make sure that you guys are prepared before you fly in. Okay, maybe let's have a bit of homework for you guys to make sure that you have that. And then if you need to practice, also feel free to reach out to us to kind of run through some of these ideas in these presentations. Okay. So coming through into some of these notes, right? I will not run through every single thing deeply. I will send this deck to you guys to refer and to kind of to kind of get some context in. So, for example, if you're doing an introduction or an elevator pitch, if you can look at the graphic on the right, it can be very simple, right? What is the company? What are you doing? Who are you targeting? What problem? And what is the secret sauce? These are the five key things, right? Sometimes it's easier to make a reference. I think if you guys have probably heard that I'm the Uber for something, I'm the cacao for something, I'm the neighbor for something, right? And again, remember some of these names that you pick up, right? It should be relevant to you. So I pick up cacao, I pick up neighbor because I know you guys are very familiar with it, right? If I say things like I'm the Grab for something, I know Grab is the Southeast Asia equivalent of Uber, right? When you come to Singapore, when you talk about Grab, most of the people will know what it is. You talk about Uber, maybe less. You talk about Kakao or Naver, some people will know about it, right? So again, how can you be relevant to the people that you talk to, you pitch to, and then you immediately get a response. Okay, this is the Grab for something. This is an Uber for something. This is a Kakao Talk for something. Okay, so and then immediately I see that is there a problem that needs to real problem needs to be solved? Is it is relevant to me? Would I want to find out more? Maybe I can start by asking questions, and then immediately here's my name card. I want to set up a meeting with you. Okay, so the goal of that elevator pitch is really to capture attention. Uh, it can also be a joke. It can also be relevant, but it can be very short and sweet as well. Okay, I know the elevators in Korea in Seoul it takes a long time, so you guys have a bit more time. But different environments and different circumstances call for different kind of the pitches, right? Different areas that you want to kind of pitch. So basically, prepared for that, and then so that you can kind of jump into it, but then you can stand out at the same time. So the next few sessions, I will not go through it, but I will just bring out what Justin says. Have a good framing of the problem, right? You need to basically expect that the investor knows nothing about the industry, right? Some of them might do, some of them might not do. Okay. So I think that's you need to frame the problem properly. And it basically shows how well your solution is. Okay. That's the key thing. What exactly is the problem that you're solving? Okay. And then the next solution is what exactly it is. Right. So the problem I've seen in the past is that either you are sharing how you solve the problem, but you don't share what exactly is your product, right? Is it an app? Is it a device? Is it a product? Is it like I know some of you guys are selling some of the internal components, but what exactly are you selling? Right? Are you selling the end product? Are you selling the components? Are you selling a system? Are you selling what exactly you're selling, right? So I think these are two things that you need to get basically share. Okay, what exactly it is and how it solves the problem. Okay, and what is the key area that you're trying to sell? Is it a good to have or is it a must have? If it's a must have, you should and you definitely should say it out loud that everyone in the industry actually needs it right now. Okay, so it's a really real must have. You need to share it. If you don't share it, you are undermining your own technology. You're undermining your own product. Okay. Um, I mentioned this, who are you targeting? What exactly is your IP? And then if you cannot sum up your app in 1 to 3 bullet points, like what Justin says, right? Then there's nothing about it that excites you. Okay. And the rule of thumb here in most presentations, right? My slides not included, right? Because I'm going to be sending it to you to refer, and hopefully you do take that as your learning. But in general, in every single presentation or in every single slide that you have, the rule of thumb is that there's no more than three things on that particular slide. Okay. So when you talk about your IP, your advantage, and things like that, why is it good? Talk only about the three top things that you think it's relevant, makes most sense to the product, and also makes most sense to the person you're pitching to. I know that some of them can have a lot of features, right? 5 or 6 or 7 or different features because you like to develop new stuff, you like to create it for your users and your clients, but talk about the three key things that matters the most. Okay. Because at the end of the day, the person that is receiving and reading through or even listening to your pitch, the only thing that they remember is less than three things. Three things or less. Okay. So I think that's the main thing, right? And for this entire product solution cycle, if firstly, your product is not a real product, sorry, your problem is not a real problem, right? Then you lose credibility or lose the attention of the person you're pitching to. Okay. Secondly, if your problem is a real problem, great. If your solution is not the right solution for the problem, then that's going to be a problem too, right? Because again, you lose the credibility of the person that you're pitching to, right? Because I will be sitting there and thinking that, hey, it is a good problem to have. It's a big problem, but your solution doesn't seem to address the problem. Do you guys even know what you guys are doing? Right? Or have you created the solution just to find a problem? Right? So these are the things that will go through my mind, for example, as an investor. And then I'll kind of think and I'll consider whether I should be paying attention to you more, I should trust you more, or where's the credibility around that? Okay, so the whole problem solution and then what the product actually is very important. It makes up, I'll say, 50-60% of your entire presentation. Okay, moving on, product demo. I know a lot of you guys have, let's say, either hardware or media types of products in there. So basically, have not just have screenshots like what Justin is saying here, right? If you can have screenshots, okay, if you can have videos, that would be best. Um, Videos and sound, that would be the best. If your videos doesn't have sound, it's also good because then you can walk through to the presentation, how your entire workflow is. If not, even if you have screenshots, it'd be good to walk the person or the investor or the client through what is a typical user journey of your product itself. Okay, let them imagine, basically use screenshots to do that and then walk them through itself, right? So no matter what, you should be prepared for a simple demo, right? And secondly, you should always be prepared if anything technical goes wrong, right? I've seen a lot of these things, right? And I'm gonna try it later because I realized that when I shared my screen just now, I didn't share a sound. So I'm just going to make sure that this thing works later. So again, when you show a video, sometimes the video doesn't play. When you show a video, sometimes the video plays, it doesn't have sound, right? So these are some of these key problems that will happen during a presentation itself. And if you're prepared for it, then you can have always backup plans, right? So if the sound doesn't play, great, then I'm prepared to jump in and share about that, about the user flow itself. Okay. And so at least have a demo, and beware really of what we call Murphy's Law. No, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Okay. So basically do make sure that you have a demo prepared and make sure that even if it's a video, for example, you have the video downloaded on the computer. Don't depend on the internet, right? Because especially if you're at a client's office or an investor's office, sometimes you might not be able to connect to the internet well, even from your phone, right? So make sure that you have enough the entire video downloaded so that you can actually have it play properly. Okay. The next few I will just jump through quickly. All right. Target size. Why is it important? Is basically your investor especially want to know that this is a big problem, that I can earn money from it and you can sell a lot from it. Okay. There's different ways to calculate it. There's top down and bottom up, right? So have a bit sharing of both and balance in something in between. It really allows, especially this in this case, the investors to know how big the problem is, right? And again, coming back to my previous point is that don't expect the investor to know everything. Okay, so make sure that you have these key numbers that you share and make sure that these numbers also make sense, right? So that's one of the main things. If it doesn't make sense, then there's no point. It will discount the credibility into you. Okay. The other key point is who are your competitors? I think for many of you here, especially when you are entering a new market, basically it's going to be one of the key things where you need to understand a bit of the market more, right? So how can you understand who's already in the market and basically how can you position yourself amongst all your different competitors within the market itself. Okay, how are you different? What are your strengths versus them? What are your weaknesses versus them? Right? There must be a reason why these competitors exist in the market, and there must be a reason why they are getting clients, right? And customers. Why are customers buying their product? So please include logical comparison factors and then position yourself in versus them. Okay, so I think there's a bit of homework for those of you going into Singapore, for those of you going into Australia. I think these are slightly easier, especially these are English-speaking countries. If you go to Indonesia, then there's a lot more work because even the websites are in Bahasa. So you might need to translate that back into English or Korean so that you can understand it a bit better. But please do your homework, right? Because if you're not aware of who your competitors are in the market, then your clients and your investors will not be believing in you, right? In terms of that this is good enough for the market. Okay. Um, Next point, business model itself. How are you going to reach your target market? How fast can you do it? This is again more for investors. But for customers itself, how you charge, how you make money, it's going to be key, especially for those of you doing AI products, right? I think business models for AI is evolving, is changing, and there's different way to charge, right? They can be subscription based, they can be usage based, they can be even success based, right? Because of that, I think you need to make sure that you need to understand that your clients are understanding or are used to that kind of business model within the market itself. Okay. Sometimes they are not, right? Because certain markets, for example, let's say in general, let's say Asia compared to the West, right? The Western side, they are more they're more used to, let's say, subscription-based or SaaS kind of services. Asia-based, there's still a bit of comparatively, there's still a lot more interest in service-based products. All right. So these are things that you need to come in and plan it with the business model itself. Okay. Um, Traction is important, right? For investors, they need to know who you have been validated by, how you're earning money, how are you relevant to them. For clients, who are the similar types of clients that have used your product, right? Um, Sometimes it's a good or bad thing, right? Because if you put a direct competitor on the slide as an existing customer, right? Um, it might backfire because hey, you're already working with them. We can't really work with you. So you need to do a bit more homework on that. But most of the clients and the corporates that we've seen, they want to know that, hey, I have customers in this industry. How are these customers working with you? How is their experience working with you? Okay. So basically that's the traction. And then basically the metrics, especially for investors in terms of the potential growth itself. Okay. So these points are really just mostly for investors, right? They want to know how you actually grow. What is the lifetime value? What is the customer acquisition cost? Because it boils down to profitability in the company, right? So things like LTVs and CACs and things like retention rates are um, some of the key metrics that investors are looking at, especially in this region in Southeast Asia, because uh, gone are the days I mentioned, gone are the days that people are investing based on GMV or GTV, right? They're looking more at actual revenue, not just recurring revenue, but actual revenue, and also what is the unit economics, right, for each of these client and product that you have. So find ways you can present yourself as the expert, right? And then the credibility, right? And then good investors will invest in the team and the person who's presenting, right? If you're the founder, that's the best, especially if you're pitching it to investors. But if you're not a founder or you're a key employee or your first few employees, make sure that you represent the companies well. Make them feel like it is your company, right? I Okay, one of my pet peeve, and I've seen that in some of the startups, is that try to understand a bit more, especially if you're not a founder, right? Try to have um, a bit more confidence in the way that you're pitching, uh, in order to reflect that you understand the company very well, even though you're not the founder. Okay, a lot of the things where I've seen that contributes to this pet peeve is that even if you're not the founder, I've seen bad examples. Okay, this is a bad example. Um, I don't know much about the technical things. I might need to bring in my founder, or I might need to bring in my technical expert, right? That's not really a good way to say that you don't understand, but you have to find a different way to share that, okay, these are things that we can do. These are the things that I need to confirm with my team that we can do. All right. So frame it in a more positive way and make it think like that it's your company, even if you're not the founder. Okay. So these are some key examples where if I turn off the person that I'm speaking to, then you're gonna again lose the credibility, you can lose the score, and then there's a chance that I might not want to follow up with you as an investor. Okay. So again, make if you're not a founder, make sure that your investor or your client think that you're a key part of this entire company itself. If you're a founder, then there's a lot more pressure to make sure that you know everything, right? Even though you're a technical person or a technical co-founder, make sure that you know that the business side, these are how things actually work. If you're a non-technical co-founder, at least you know a bit about the technical side of the things in terms of, especially the key IP, in terms of how it actually works, right? Of course, if it dives deeper into the key technical areas and you're not able to answer, then you can say that maybe let's set up a meeting so that I can bring my technical co-founder in, but these are the key IP that we actually cover. Okay, so the communication here can make or break things again, right? So make sure that you are a good representative for the company and organization and the vision behind the company itself. Okay, right? So let me just jump straight into again a bit similar to what I mentioned, right? Start with the vision, why things are being done, why the company has been created, and then go into how it's being done and what it is. Okay, so it's a bit similar to in terms of um, problem. Instead of doing a problem, you can talk about the why you're doing it, how you're doing it, which is the solution, and then what is actually your product itself. I'm going to play this quick video, and this is from the TED Talk from Simon Sinek. I think some of you guys have seen it, but it's a good motivating factor in terms of how you guys can share about your product itself. Okay, let me know. Again, this is one of the products that I'm the technological issues, right? Anything in the presentation can go wrong. Let me know that if the video is not playing. Secondly, if you don't hear any sound, right?
This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products.
All right. I hope that you guys heard and everything here. So if you have any interest in understanding more about Simon and his work, and you can just look at TED or YouTube. There's quite a bit of it online. Okay. Last few points. I really want to bring it to kind of design itself. I think I mentioned some of these points already. For example, rule of three, use more slides. And again, my slides is a really bad example because I'm a bit lazy. Okay, I put everything here. I use the same deck. I present to you and I send it to you again after the session. What you could do also potentially, you have a present only version and then you have also a sending only version. Okay, like the present version, essentially, it's mainly less words on the slide itself, but then you make people listen to you talk. Okay, and the read version is that after your meeting, you send a follow-up email. This is the whole slides that I sent. It has a lot more information that I can read and refer to. Especially for investors, it's useful because then I can build my due diligence report based on more information on your presentation itself. Okay. Um, Use, white space. Again, less is more. And design is really important. Okay. You don't have to be, super fancy or a good designer, but again, in the past, really, I've seen a lot of, very technical stuff that goes into a presentation. It's good for a technical presentation for an internal team meeting. It's not really there for a business meeting. Okay. There's a lot of tools available, so make sure that you can actually tap onto them. And I think some of you guys can probably use AI to do that nowadays. And then last section is really about, delivery. Okay. There's different types. There's in person, there's virtual deliveries. Okay. Um, we talk about in person. How do you actually have a good posture? How do you make eye contact? How do you make sure that everyone can listen to you? And then when you talk, mix up your speed and your volume. Okay. I think that's one of the key things. Don't go blah 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 blah, blah nonstop. Then you sound very monotonous. Okay, that's the main thing. If it's virtual delivery, then how you basically present yourself in front of the camera, again, you should prepare a bit of that. And then how people you think you see you, right? Maybe you can do a bit of recording itself on, let's say, Teams or Zoom or so on. So actually try and see whether you like the way you pitch online, and then practice a couple of more times. Okay. Sometimes you can cheat, especially on a virtual meeting, because you can use script, but let's not have you kind of read through the entire pitch on a screen, because people on the other side can know that you're reading, right? In the early days, especially during the early days of COVID, I've seen that happen, and it's a bit weird because it feels like I'm not talking to a person. I'm talking to a person that's reading to me. Okay, so some of these, the experience and the feeling is a bit different when you present it and we speak differently. So basically, be aware of your surroundings, where you're pitching from. You can be a cafeteria. I know there's a lot of cafes in Seoul, but then some of them are noisy. So make sure that you're aware of that. And even if you're online, who's behind you, who's jumping, sometimes you can use it as a good way. If you have kids running into the room, you can use it to loosen the tension in the atmosphere, right? But too much of that then it gives a bad experience. Okay. Final tips for today: you really need to practice. Okay, especially again if English is not your first language, just practice a few more times. Initially create the script. Even have AI like ChatGPT or Gemini help you create the initial script, and then customize it so that it sounds like you. It doesn't sound like a computer that is actually presenting. Okay, make sure that it sounds a bit like you. Um, you have good examples, you good case studies for your company and your product. Make sure that you have some good case studies and examples that you can bring from start to finish, right? How did a client engage with you all the way from the start to the end? Okay. Be clear to your audience. I've seen some of you go round and round that this is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do. But at the end of the day, basically you can cut it short in one sentence, and this is who we are and this is what we do. Okay. If you want to, again, traction is key. Names and advisors will be good, especially if they add value. If you think that, let's say, the person you're pitching to don't understand who they are or the titles or the backgrounds, then let's not spend too much time on them. Okay. So then it'll be good if certain people uh prefer that to have for you to have more advisor names, or key professors you have in your slides, or key clients that you have. So make sure that you understand what works best for them, right? And then last 2 points, first, really keeping the last 2 points, keep it simple. Okay. If you have nothing much to, if you realize that you have nothing much to say, then keep it really simple, short and sweet. Okay. And the final thing is please do not lie, right? Your if you can exaggerate, but once you have been caught lying, then the entire trust in you is gone. And business is all about building trust, right? Business is all about relationship between you and the person that you're dealing with, and the relationship is all about trust at the end of the day. Okay, so I think these are some of the key important areas, and especially nowadays, when you do pitching, right? Let's say I'm pitching, I'm presenting to you right now. You guys might be, or and during the process of my presentation, Googling about who is Simon Sinek, who is Justin Khan, right? I can Google about when I listen to you, I can Google about your company and your product and your market share at the same time, right? Or market science at the same time, and who your competitors are, and I can immediately try to check whether what you say is it true? Does it make sense to me? Is it relevant to the industry that I'm in? And then I can immediately create an impression of whether, hey, I want to set up a next meeting, or I should maybe find some way to reject you nicely and not have the next meeting, right? I can already do that in a half an hour meeting or a half an hour call, right? So these are some of the tips that you can actually look for. Um, so again, if you're interested, this YouTube video, I'm not going to play it, by Justin Khan is a very good um, short sharing by him in terms of what makes a very good presentation and what makes a good pitch. He's a much better storyteller than I am. Of course, he has a lot more experience in this space than I am because he's a media guy. Okay, so if you have time, please look for him, not look for him, but watch this video. And then last point here, reminder, I think I shared this earlier during the meeting during the workshop in Seoul, but applications for HTX is closing this week. So if you have not looked at the problem statements that they have, please refer to them to see if they have products that are addressing any of the problem statements. Okay, so startups that get selected into the program runs a POC for the project. Okay, and we've just done a in-person roadshow for them in Silicon Valley that had almost 100 people attend. So there's a lot of interest in this space in terms of smart cities, public safety, homeland security, and so on. Okay. Finally, I think some of you guys might not have my email. Again, this is my email, this is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. All right.